So we're going to draw us a tiger today. Let's get that head in. We're going to draw in, get into the shoulder, push back with the paw. We'll drop this down, get this over here. Like that. Draw that rib cage as it comes around. High shoulder. I can get that spine to flex. And then for the time being, you don't really have to worry about how long you're making your gestures. But let's get this leg in. Just because we'll come back and we'll fix that in construction. Okay. Let's get this leg to come up. Maybe he's taking a step there. That sounds pretty fun. Let's take a little bit of a step. Tail's going to come out and around off the spine. So let's go put in some construction now. With the arm pushed like this, it's going to push the rest of the shoulder up. So we're going to have this massive slide of the shoulder blade. So now we can get into that lima bean shape that's going to come around into here. Neck. It's going to come up higher, and then we can say, okay, we're going to get this. There's that bean shape that we're talking about. You see massive compression that's happening in the triceps, and then we can flatten out the shape. Tigers' heads tend to fit in a circle or a box, and then it's like you take another box and just add it at a slight angle as it comes through, so that you can see its nose is getting better like that. It's kind of looking down. You can change that. Let's make his head come up a little tiny bit more, because you're the artist in command of your drawing. Don't be pushed around by your tiger drawings. Don't accept that stuff. Okay, so now that we have the size of the head, we can go back and we can do some measurements. Okay, shoulder blade is a head, humerus is a head. This is a little long, and we're going to have to put that wrist down in through here, and then we can get down into the paw. So now we're going to get that cylinder, which is going to be in here. And you don't be afraid to make it a tapered cylinder. And then we can show that torque of the paw getting into the digits. Metacarpals are right here. Carpals are going to pull through. Okay? So we can actually see that paw that's going to be there. As that neck is going to come out and off. And then we can drop down into the other scapula. And here's that shoulder. And then we're just going to be up. He's just placed his paw down, so there's going to be a little bit of a dip in his paw. And then we can get into that shape. So just come up and off. Right. He's just put his paw down. Like he's going to get a drink of water, or he's watching an iPhone or something. Okay, rib cage is here, so then we can say there's the latissimus dorsi. It's going to move up. Spine is going to push up, and then we can get down into that pelvis, which is going to be over here. Okay, this guy, just declare that pelvis is right here, and I like to use that wedge shape, and that way now I can have the knee come out. Go back, check your proportions. It's going to come in through here, finding those bones. So I'm just doing some quick corrections to my gesture. Now we can have that bean shape that's going to come down into the knee. We're going to have the gastrocnemius, which is going to move in through here. We're going to get into the calcaneus. And now back down into the foot. So let's just make sure that we get lots of compression in that back foot. Tail's going to come out and off. Yeah, that pelvis a little low. The tail's going to come off. And then now we can find the abdominis. It's going to go in because now we know where the pubis is. And then we can have the other leg. It's going to move around here like this. And he's tentatively, you know, he's never seen this iPhone before. He says, what? So now we can bring in the foot. It's down just a little bit. It's just about the plant. And if things start to go out of proportion, we're just going to go back and check the measurement. No weight on this foot yet. It's similar to this, but we are pushing on this. So now we can get in here, and we got the tail. It's going to move through. To reiterate, here are the lima beans. Big push on this one. Lots of flexation into the shoulder. We're going to drop down here. We'll always want to see that little bit of a shelf that's right there. It's that neck inserts. And then tigers. We're drawing our tigers. You have that nose that's going to come out into here. We're going to find where the eye is going to see. And then the cool thing is if we bring this back, and right at the back of the head, that's where the ear is going to live. Tigers have a big ruff. Especially Bengal tigers and Sumatran tigers, they have a big ruff that's amazing. Lots of fur. One thing that's useful, I find, for drawing cats is they have this like piece of skin that comes out and off, and so it's interesting to draw it. You can, dogs have it, lots of animals have it, but it's really prominent on cats. And so you can pull this piece of skin. That's where a lot of fur is going to see, and that kind of stuff. For tigers, speaking of fur, you're going to get big shaggy fur that's going to be hanging down off their bellies. But pull that line down, and then that line almost creates, it's all like when the leg is really pulled out, it almost creates a straight for the top portion of the leg, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now we have our cat. How long did that take? A little longer than I wanted it to. Okay. But now we can get started. Okay, let's look at some student stuff. There we go. So here's our first student. I think what we need to do with this one is this is just a proportions thing, and I'm sure when we get those proportions under control, we're just going to be fine. This head's a little large for its body, but if we take that head, we can bring this back. Now we can say, okay, it's really hard to draw animals laying down, and so this is props to this artist for having this view, that sort of underside view. But now we can have that shoulder. It's going to come way up. Drop in the humerus here, and then we can get into the paw, which is going to come out and around like this. Okay. And then on the other side, we can. This might be out. It looks like its paws are kind of crossed. Cats are notorious for doing that kind of thing. So now let's get in that rib cage. So make sure this feels really round in here, and then we can come down and push up with that pelvis. So I think we can go in here like this. Now we can get into that leg, and from this view, the cool thing about that is we can actually see the leg as like this flattened tube, like if you took a toilet paper tube or something and you kind of squashed it. And then we can get into the calcaneus, and we can see that paw. It's going to do its thing. And then see that paw as it comes down. And then we've got the belly that's going to be squashed in there. And so then the other leg might be coming out like this, but all we're going to see is we're just going to see the little paw peeking out. So we can actually move that back, and then they're having a lazy day, so we can move the tail, and so the tail's going to come out, and they're like, hey. The drawing of the head's pretty good. Okay. We just want to make sure that we're keeping it solid. Okay, so proportions aside, this is skeletal, which is good. Let's get that arm to come out. We can set this paw down. You'll see this from the back. But then keep track of the other shoulder. It looks like the other shoulder is going to be just about as high. So keep track of that. That's going to help you draw that rib cage out, because now we're seeing that dimension there. Okay. Spine, and then we can get into the pelvis. And from here, the pelvis sort of appears like this. So we can actually see the tail come out from the pelvis here. And we can get into the leg, and it looks like this leg is kind of turned. So again, there's that lima bean. We can get into calcaneus, which is going to be good and so forth. Okay, so still moving through here, but we really want to see that dimension in there. Don't lose that sense of dimension. What's going to happen on these guys? The leg is going to be out over here, so you can see that tail. You'll actually see the tail kind of protrude up a little tiny bit, and then it's going to drop back down. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're getting all that stuff in there. If we get into its neck, and its head is slightly turned, then we can see the head doing its bit. Okay, the nose is going to be out over here. Okay, so dimension, we want to get that dimension in there. Okay, this is getting a little mushy. So think about your dimension. Rib cage is going to be back here. It's fairly narrow. It's going to flare out as it moves away from us. And then we're going to be able to see the shoulders attached. We'll be able to see the shoulders on either side. Okay, so we can get that neck that's going to be in here, head, and so forth. So make sure that we're not getting too mushy. Okay? It's not too bad. These drawings are nice. We have another artist who's used every color in the book to be able to draw their animal, which there's nothing wrong with. It's just we have to find another color to not compete with it. Okay. So what we'll do for this one, we will change the opacity a little bit. Okay. So, good drawings. We're off to a good start. Seems like the head is getting a little flat. You're worrying more about details than you are about the construction. This one is much better. When we get into my drawing stuff, okay. When we get into the head, think about there is going to be a square that's going to be up there. And then drop that square down, and then take a step down, and then you can get into the nose. Okay, that nose is going to come down in through here, but the cool thing is as it reaches just past that square, that's where you're going to be able to draw off. You can drop in that nose that's going to be in here, and put in the tennis balls. It's jowls. I call them the tennis balls because they look like it. And you can put in the chin, but then note you're going to have to push that cheek out. You're really going to see the zygomatic, which is going to be right in through here. Okay, we're going to roll out off into the eye. Okay, so again, roll up from that nasal ridge. Make that wide. I might need to go back and change that. Brow is going to be here, so then you can get to see that ruff, the famous tiger ruff. They're great. Corners, then we can put in the ears. Okay, so the tiger's head is going to be in there like that. Feels like these are getting a little big. I think you're excited about drawing tiger heads and stuff. Oh man, tiger heads, they're the coolest thing. This is really cool. You've got some nice gesture that's going on in here. Let's go into this guy. I like where you're putting the head. I like how long this neck is. That feels really good. But once you have the proportions of the head, then measure back. Okay, their neck is a head. Pretty much for tigers, everything's a head, which is really cool. Okay, so we can drop in, and then we're going to bring in that neck as it comes off of the here. Really show a little bit of flex or tension that's going to happen here. Okay, and now we can get into the lima beans. Okay, he's going for a drink, so he's really pushing his shoulders up. Okay, he's going for, I guess there's that iPhone that's back there. He's watching the phone. Somebody keeps leaving all these phones on them. It's distracting the tigers. Alright, so now we can get into that lima bean. We have a lot of compression. It's going to be out over here. Okay, this you could actually use a tombstone for. You can see that tombstone's going to come out here like this, but still like to keep it consistent. Okay, rib cage is going to come way up, and we might see him be out a little bit longer because that rib cage, which is here, you see that flare out. Okay, so it's going to come out over here like this, and then of course we're going to see the other side there. So it's flaring out. So let's get those shapes in. I'll go back over this with a different color, just so it's easier to see. There's a brachyradialis, there's a carpa radialis, and then you've done a nice job of putting in the bone, or the skeletal structure, which I think is excellent. Now we can get into the foot. The foot's going to come out over here and show those shapes. And then the two inner paws are going to be longer than the two outer paws. So we can draw in that shape there. Nicely handled though. Okay, where this is going to move up, we're going to actually see a little bit of a tilt of the body, so we can see the pelvis, which is going to be back here. And from this view, we're going to be able to see the inside of the pelvis, which is pretty slick. Okay, and then you can get into its legs. So the proportions, not too bad. Big pull from the sartorius down. Feels like this is a little shallow. So we're going to come up to the knee here. And then we might even want to bring this foot out just a little bit. It just feels slightly off balance. If somebody came by and pushed its head, it would fall over. So we don't want to do that. So let's bring this leg back just a little bit. And then we can get into the foot. Other than that, your understanding of the skeletal anatomy is very, very strong. So good for you on that. Okay. If it's hard to see, let's just make it go in black. Alright, so we're going to come around off the head. Nice that you're getting into the nose. Let's just put on that structure, and then we can just roll around into the eye. Okay, so we're going to get that brow ridge that's here. Kind of flat on the top of its head. And then you can put in the tennis balls and get that chin in there. Tigers have big chins. Ears coming up, but now let's just get that volume that's in there. So neck is going to come up and through. And you'll be able to see that jaw for this guy. Throat, blam, like that. Now let's get into that lima bean shape. Big compression, lots of compression that's in here. Up through the arm, and then we're going to see this kind of fold under. And now we can get into the brachyradialis, into the wrist, down into that paw. Show the compression in there. Okay. Same thing's going to happen over here. You might even want to show a little bit more of a pitch or an angle that's going to happen in there. Okay. As we come up off the shoulder, then we can get into the back. See that rise right before the pelvis, and then we can draw in. Get into the leg. Show some compression in there. Knee. Down into the foot. foot you can just draw as like a box-like shape. Okay. Straight off the back, and then, yeah, you can decide what you want to do with that tail. Okay? So not looking bad. Looking pretty good. You want to keep this nice and round here. Don't let it get too flat. Okay? The other one's skeleton is good. Just measure your proportions. Scapula, yeah. It's going to be longer. This guy's a tiger. They're the largest of all the cats. Okay? They can get up to 12 feet long. Big old monsters. Okay? When the apocalypse is over, I highly recommend going to San Francisco Zoo. Is really good. They have an area where they feed the tigers, and you can actually see them kind of up close and personal. So it's really cool. Let's see. Here we have another student who's doing cats. Okay. These are looking good too. You're similar to me. You have a lot of lines. I had an instructor who would be like, "Look at all your lines. You're putting all those lines down." Line economy is important. And I mean, but it feels weird that I'm telling you line economy is important when I put down so many lines myself. I think for you, you're really doing a nice job too. You've got that head thing going on. You've got the nose that's going to be in there. Okay, I think this is a jaguar. I think. But I have my notes here, but I don't seem to have written it down. Jaguar's a little bit smaller animal, and they have big jowls. Big, they look like a pit bull. Big jowls. And then we can bring this in. But I still think your proportions are a little off. You probably want to bring this guy down a little bit more. He's got his paws coming up. And so that means that this one is pushed down. And then we can get into the paw. It's going to be here. So we're going to get a rise to the shoulder. And then let's bring that guy out just a little bit more. Rib cage is going to come out. Even though they're jaguars, so jaguars, they do have some components that are a head. I think their scapula is 3/4 of the head. If I'm just recalling that information right away. The neck is, I think it's a half a head or something, so that's really good that you're putting that in there. Then as it moves back, we are going to get a little bit more distance there. It feels like that's a little close. Okay, so we want to move that pelvis back. And we're going to put in that pelvis there so we can get that tail to come up and through. Okay. These lines went a little too far. And then we can get into the leg. What's that leg doing? Get those lightning bolts in there. Okay. It might be out over here like this. And then this is pretty good though. You're looking really solid. You might want to get those. Well, I think once you get your proportions under control, you'll be doing great. Leg is going to come out and through. Here's that lima bean, because this leg is dropped. You're going to see that shoulder. It's going to be over here, lima bean shape. It's going to be out over here, and then we can get into the paw and so forth. We're a little bit higher on this side because the paw is being pushed up. So now we can move out around here, get into that paw, which is going to be out over here. So show the angle of that shoulder. Okay? Otherwise, these are not looking bad. I guess this is a tiger. Look at this is starting to look like a ruff. Okay. A little bit of a slope to the back. I know that they do that, but I don't know. When I think of the majesty of a tiger, I don't think of a sway back. They will do that, especially if they're stretching or if they're doing something like that. You might also want to, instead of having the paws just standing straight up, you might want to give it a little bit of energy out. For this view, you can see the tombstone, which is pretty cool. And then you can get into the head. That's looking good. I want to just keep this a little straighter, show a little bit more flex as this comes up. And then push it back. If it's a leopard or a jaguar, you're going to have more of a shape that's like this. If it's a tiger, that neck is going to be longer, the cage is going to be longer. The cage is here. There's that pelvis, which is going to be back here. So it's going to be similar to that. So, so these are looking pretty good. It's hard to do tigers sitting. So again, props to you for doing that. Keep track of those shapes. Okay, so this is going to come down here, and then we can get into the paw. Okay, neck is going to be here, but don't. We're going to see that torque of the rib cage. So you can actually see this move up. But now we've got a pelvis, which is going to be over there. So this is starting to get a little mushy. So best way to handle it: find the femur. You come back to the tibia, fibula, and then you can get into the foot. You might even want to have a little bit of a turn there. But now we can find the top of the pelvis here. It's at an angle, and then you can build into the leg using these shapes. Okay. So head looks good, but these are, we're a little hairy, so try and get those. I think you're thinking and drawing, which is not a bad thing. Keep it light and loose, and I think it will. I think that's going to help. When you're putting in the legs, again, when you're putting in the legs, always show a little bit of flex. Just a little bit of flex in there, and we can get this guy come down like that, so we get that gesture. Okay. All right, this is looking good. You're on your way. We have another artist here who's doing tigers. Wow, look at these. These are coming along. I think what we got is just proportion. We need to think about the proportion in there. So we got our animal. This is looking pretty good. This is great. I love this little push to the back. That's really great. The pelvis is right there, so we can actually see this leg in there. This is getting a little mushy right in there. Let's make sure that those are nice and straight. How you're handling the paw is excellent. We lost a little bit of the shoulder. Look how high that can go. So we can really push that guy up there. And then don't tell me it wasn't like that in the reference, because you're supposed to be out drawing in real life, but we can't because it's the apocalypse. So we have this high shoulder, nice high shoulder, so we can actually see that diagonal between the two shoulders. But if we're pushing up that high, even if this is a rock that's over there, or the skull of its victims, even if he's on the skull of his victims, then we're going to be able to see shoulder and push this line back. Get a different color, so we can see that shoulder, and then bam, we're going to get back. So we're really going to get that shoulder get pushed up. Okay. And then I think we lost a joint here, which happens all the time when you're standing on someone's skull. Okay, now we can get that head down, which is cool, and this nice. See the spine go through, and then we can move through like that. But let's get those paws and those legs to work. It feels like we're just having a little bit of an issue understanding where those components are. Now we can get into the paw. You can go for the paw there. Okay. So I think for you, it's not construction. You're doing such a nice job with the construction. It's more like getting those components under control. Okay. So now we can see there's that shoulder, so that means we're going to have the other shoulder on the other side. This is going to flare back, and then, yeah, that wrist, look how big that wrist is going to be. Okay. Very nice. These are really nice drawings. Okay. Here is This guy, we're going to come down, so you might need to push this out just a little bit longer, okay? Because you got to get yourself a house cat there. And I think everybody wants a tiger for a house cat, okay? These are looking really solid. Just keep in mind that humerus as it comes back, and I think you're on your way, okay? Good job. Good job, everybody who did these cats. Very nice work. Keep it up.